Welcome to Who Cares, brought to you by Cares Foundation and Todd Lingle. Because one decision can change everything. Real stories, real impact, and real talk that matters. Who cares? We care. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. This is Todd Lingle back again for the next episode of Who Cares. And so I start every episode off with a dad joke. So here's my next dad joke. So I got a friend of mine that lost his dog, unfortunately, and he wanted to get a new pet. So he went to a pet store, and he's walking around. The dogs and cats are like running away from him. He's going like, what in the heck is going on? He walks by this parrot, and the parrot goes, hello, sir, how are you? He's like, what? So he went by him again. He said the same thing. He's like, you know what? I'm going to try a parrot. So he got this bird, takes him home, really great for the first 3 or 4 days. Then all of a sudden, the bird just starts yelling at him, cussing at him, and all this stuff. He's going like, what the heck is wrong with this bird? He's like, you know what? I'm going to teach him a lesson. I'm going to throw him in the freezer for 15 minutes and see what, teach him a lesson. So he goes and he gets him out after 15 minutes, and the bird's just shaking like that. He goes, sir, can I ask you a question? And he goes, yeah. He goes, what did the chickens do that are in there? Boom, boom. Dad joke, right? Yeah, there you go. So, all right. Well, as you know, on my first episode, if you haven't seen it, go back and take a look at it. But I talked about how I got to the point in life when my mom and sister were killed by a drunk driver. And so right now we're at the point that I went through the counseling and learned what my bad feeling I've had growing up was with the general and separation anxiety. So, and like I said at the end of episode 1, that, my life is just starting now. So it's almost like I'm a fish out of water. I had started to go back to school for, I was going to want to be a nurse, decided I want to help people more. And at this point. And so I had this training I was going through, and I ended up blowing my ankle out. I had to have surgery, and it was one of its kind, the first one in Oregon. And so they really did a lot of extra measures. So it was like a year-long recovery. And the surgeon told me, you can't go into nursing because your ankle will not hold up. So I'm like, oh man, I'm going through this recovery thing about what am I going to do now? It's like, what else is going to happen? And during that time, and I think this is a God thing, because it allowed, we had to move in with my dad, my son and I, because I couldn't work. And so, in fact, I was on crutches for, 4, 5, 6 months, something like that. And during that time, I got to talk to my dad a little more about my mom, because like I said before, you didn't go to counseling. The old adage was buck up, buttercup. And so we actually got to talk, and I don't know what day it was, but he said, come on out to the garage. And so he did. And I had known my dad had kept some of my mom's things in a case and like a trunk. And my dad opened it up, and he handed me my mom's purse. He goes, I have not taken anything out of it, and I just cleaned it up. This is what she had with her when she died. And I'm like, wow, that flood of emotions hit me. And I'm not sure even what I did. I'm sure I probably cried at that point. I don't know. It was so emotional for me. And you watching this, you probably had some time in your life that's kind of happened. You just kind of lost it. And so I opened it up, and I saw some of the things that were in there. And one thing I grabbed out, and I opened it up, and it was my mom's handwriting. That was the very first time in my life that I'd ever seen my mom's handwriting. And it was crazy. And you want to see the next episode, because I'm going to bring my mom's purse the next time and show you some of those things. And so I didn't bring it today just because, I don't know, it's kind of crazy feeling, but I don't know what kind of emotions I have when I grab stuff. And so, but next time I will bring it, no matter what my emotions are. So it went through some different things. He also had some other jewelry that my mom had. And so I looked at that, and I'd go back to the purse a little bit, and I pulled out, if anybody that's a little bit older, have Tic Tacs. My mom has a full enclosed, I think it's cinnamon Tic Tacs from 75. So I'm like, man, I need to find out who makes Tic Tacs and find out what that thing's worth. But I was able to go through that. And like I said, I didn't take everything out of it. In fact, I probably a year ago now finally took absolutely everything out of that purse. And I don't know, I thought about, why did I wait so long to take everything out of that purse? Maybe it was because I still wanted that connection with my mom, that there's still something to know about her, because I have one memory of my mom, and that was something about the place we lived, that she was coming down the hallway, and my sister. That's it. I don't even know what it was about. That's the only memory that I have of my mom. And so as I'm getting better, I decided to just go into caregiving. So went through some caregiving. My Aunt Verna, she lived up in Oregon by me. And, I had the opportunity, and that was my mom's sister, to go sit down with her. And I got to hear a little bit about my mom. And it was kind of funny. My aunt, she hands me this picture, and it was a picture of her and my mom back in the day. And I think it was both of them, or maybe it was just my aunt. I just don't remember now. But she goes, put it up to the light. So I took this picture and I put it up to the light, and you could see through the eyes, like there was little holes, like a pinhole through the eyes. And I'm like, that's crazy. What happened there? She goes, your mom got mad at me one day, and she took a needle and put holes in my eyes. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And so, but it was fun to be able to hear stories about my mom, because I didn't know anything about my mom, really, other than what some people had told me. And one of the hardest things that happened as well in my life that I just kind of popped in my head was, I know in the last episode I told you about college. Well, I had also been hired in the summertime, and I'll go to this real quick, to fight fires for Bureau of Land Management. And I talked to my grandmother, my mom's mom, about staying with her in Boise, Idaho, because that's where my fire school was going to be. And she goes, yeah, you can stay down here with me. And I said, I want to ask you some questions about mom and stuff like that, because I didn't have a chance to do that before. And it's kind of crazy, because I think it was like the day after that my grandma talked to myself and my brother, that my step-grandfather was in the hospital dying from cancer, and my grandma didn't show up. And my uncle, from my understanding, went to my grandma's house to find out where she was at. And she had a little dog, and a dog was in her bedroom and he'd tried to scrape out the carpet underneath the door. And my grandma had died of a massive heart attack. And so that for me was devastating, because that was my link to my mom, my last person that I could really truly talk to about my mom, that knew everything about my mom. And at the funeral, I collapsed. I had to have people pick me up. And to this day, it still affects me at funerals. In fact, I haven't even gone to a funeral since then. Now think about it. So that's how it's really affected me. And so I lost that connection. And talking to my aunt was just like, wow, I got a little bit of knowledge about my mom, and so that's like when I talk about life starting, that's like me being being an infant, if you will, in my 30s, trying to know more about my mom, talking to my aunt, those types of things. It was some great things. And so as I went along, I recovered from my ankle, did caregiving for a while. And I won't say that I was all better. I just found out what that feeling was my whole life. So I had to start dealing with it. And it was still strong, even though I'd went to counseling and everything. And I'd go to counseling every once in a while. So, but I was starting to live, had a girlfriend. We ended up moving from where we're at in Oregon, over toward the coast of Oregon, and working. And, I got into back into insurance after the caregiving, and I was doing really well. Ended up getting thyroid cancer, and fought through that, which thank goodness it was not very bad. It was encapsulated, so I didn't have to have chemo or anything. The job I was working at was great. Then COVID comes along, like everybody, you can remember COVID when it started, where you can't go out into public and you have to wear a mask. All this in Oregon was really bad about that. So the business I was working in insurance, we were going into businesses, and we couldn't do that anymore. So basically, my job was gone, and so it's like, man, what am I going to do now? And I went back to Idaho and helped my dad out a little bit. My girlfriend and I had broke up, and I'm like, man, what am I going to do? So ended up moving to Arizona to start a business, and business went for about 1.5 years, and it just didn't work out with the partners that I had and stuff, which was not a big deal. But at that point, I'm going like, man, what am I going to do? Because I'm good at sales. I've done sales my whole life, so maybe I'll just go back into sales. And it just popped up. You know what? If I'm going to do this, I need to do it now, and that is CARES Foundation. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a CARES Foundation. And so I thought, and I spoke off and on, and I didn't mention this, I spoke off and on at like Victim Impact Panel in Portland, Oregon once in a while. And I'd spoken at a driver's training class when I was a little bit younger, but that was all before I knew that the separation and general anxiety that I had. So I wanted to open CARES Foundation. So I called a friend of mine that was an attorney, and I was in a networking group, and he goes, man, he said, the company I work for, they're going to make me charge you $5,000 or $6,000 to help you open it up. And he said, but I know this gal, and she owns her own legal company. And I'm like, oh, okay, firm. And so he goes, I'll call her and give you a call back. So, he is gone. I'm off the phone, calls me back like in 15 minutes. I'm laughing. He goes, what are you laughing at? And I'm like, you'll resonate with me here as the audience here, because I said, I've never had an attorney call me back within 15 minutes and not charge me. So he starts laughing. So I know you can visualize that. And so he said, hey, I talked with her, and she's willing to help you open it up. Here's her cell phone. Give her a call. So I did. Gave her a call, and she goes, yeah, I'll help you. She goes, I'll charge you this amount. And it was not very much. I'm like, done. Let's do it. So we got CARES Foundation opened up here in Arizona. And so I'm like, you know what? I just want to get going on this. I was like eager to get going. And so I wanted to speak in Idaho. That's where I grew up. My mom and sister were killed in Idaho. And my dad and stepmom were going to a church, a non-denominational Christian church, and I wanted to speak there. So I don't know how it all came about, but with the minister and stuff, we ended up talking, and we figured out that his wife's grandmother, so the minister's wife's grandmother, was probably the first responder to my mom's wreck. And I'm going like, whoa, no way. This is, at that point, it was like, what, 47 years after the fact? And I'm like, is she still alive? And he's like, yeah, she's alive. She lives like in Weiser, which was 30 minutes from us. And so I was able to call her, and I met with her for a couple hours. And I was really skeptical at first. I'm like, yeah, okay, what, how do you know it was really my mom's wreck that you were at? And she goes, I knew your family. She goes, your uncle is a deputy coroner in a neighboring county. And so she goes, your mom's wreck was a huge impact in my life. She goes, I won't forget any of the details of stuff. And I'm like, I'm glad you said that. I said, because I want to know details, all the details. And she goes, you really think you want to know the details? I'm like, absolutely. I do want to know the details, because all I know is what I had told you on episode 1, that my dad and I drove up to the wreck, and then we were whisked away to the hospital to see my brother. So I had no recollection of anything else. She goes, okay. And I said, will you please tell me the details? So she did. So I'm going to tell you now what she said. I won't go into gruesome details because I got all the details. But she got there, she said, and there was an older lady that was probably trained in first aid through like 4-H or something like that. And she goes, everybody was wrapped up in gauze, except for your mom and your sister. She goes, your brother, his arm was wrapped up and his head was wrapped up. And she goes, you could see that he was obviously bleeding from the head. And she goes, the drunk driver, he was cut from his shoulder to his groin and he was wrapped up in gauze. And she goes, back then, if someone had rendered first aid on scene, they couldn't unwrap anything to see how things were. So they had to keep everything the way it was. So she goes, your mom and your sister were deceased. And she goes, I got to take a breath here. Sometimes this affects me too when I talk about it. My brother, they put him in the ambulance, and she said the hardest thing for her was to have to put the drunk driver in the same ambulance with my brother. And she goes, you don't know how many times driving to the hospital that she wanted to kick that drunk driver out the door. And I'm like, I can't imagine. I said, but can you tell me more details? And so she told me more details. So when my mom, she was driving in a 66 Chevelle Super Sport, and he was in I think it was a Ford truck, I was told. But when they hit driver to driver head on. And when they hit, it popped the hood up in my mom's car and drove it back through the windshield. Back then in 75, kids stood up in the front seat. My sister was standing up in the front seat and she died instantly. That's what the first responder told me. And then she said, your mom was leaning over your sister like she was hugging her. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense because I have their death certificates. And the death certificate on my sister said she did die instantly. And the death certificate on my mom said she died moments after impact. So I really, truly believe that my mom saw that my sister was gone and leaned over and hugged my sister. And so everything she told me was like, wow, man, this, and I'm getting chills right now, but it gives me my mom and sister's last moments of their life. And, you'd think that would be really like weird or whatever, but it was like a form of closure for me to know my mom and sister's last moments. And I'm like, wow. And so again, I spent a couple hours with her, recorded her, so I have her recorded. And, I came back to Arizona from Idaho, and a friend of mine, he has Mindwave Graphics, and we got to talking. He said he would do the logo for me because I didn't have a logo yet. So we got to talking, and I told him this story, and he goes, man, I got to do something with the K in CARES. Like I told you before, CARES, my mom's name was Karen. That's where the K-A-R-E comes from. My sister was Shelly. That's where the S comes from. So that's CARES. And so he came back with this logo that we currently have right here. And if you look, one leg of the K wraps around the other leg. That is significant of my mom giving my sister that last hug. So that's where our logo comes from. And the color, the bluish color here, was my mom's favorite color, my dad said. So that is how significant the logo is and what it means to me. And so when you see that, that's my mom and my sister right here, and you know why I put it on the left side? Because my heart's right here and my mom's right here. And so that's starting CARES Foundation. And it's crazy on how the people I've met from doing CARES Foundation that have a story of their own. And everybody here that's watching probably has a story of their own. But it's not how your story goes, it's how you come out of the story and what you do from that point on. So if you're in that struggle of going through something, just know, ask for help, because there is people that want to help you. Reach out to us. Put a comment down below, because I will reach out and we will help you. So definitely put comments. Let us know how we're doing on the podcast here, Who Cares? Because we truly do want to know. And so I ask, if you have feel what we're doing and helping kids, We are at a 501c3 nonprofit. Go to caresteday.org, that's with a K, K-A-R-E-S, today.org, and help us donate to us and help us further our cause. And everyone, I want you to remember one thing. You are loved. Thanks for listening to Who Cares, brought to you by CARES Foundation and Todd Lingle. If this conversation made you think, share it with someone who needs it. Together we can create awareness, prevent tragedy, and support those who need it most. To learn more or get involved, visit us at caresteday.org, and that's CARES with a K. Until next time, make the choice that shapes a better future. Who cares? We care.